This is Dr. Thomas Klein. I am a specialist in chronic and rare diseases. I'm speaking to you from my office here in Raleigh, North Carolina. We've been talking about various myths in the quote opioid crisis, which we will discuss at some later point. That's really not a crisis at all. It's a crisis that's been present every year for more than 60 years. But today we want to focus on pain refugees. This was a term invented by Mark Ibsen up in Montana, who was hounded by the authorities out of his medical practice, and he did nothing wrong. He came up with the title because he had been compassionately seeing people who were pain refugees who could not find treatment from any other doctor. It's not uncommon to have patients that I'm familiar with that have been to 10, 15, 20 doctors, all saying, sorry, we don't prescribe opiates. And why is this? Well, we're going to go into the CDC and the physicians for responsible opioid prescribing because no one else, no other medical society, no other medical group has recommended that people be taken off their medicines. And why is that? Because they don't believe the medicines work and are dangerous, as we've talked about before. So, how many pain refugees are there? How many people in the United States have been forcefully, without their consent, taken off their pain medicines that were working sometimes for years without any side effects because of the fear of addiction phobia? Well, we have a paper written by Nora Volkow, who is the head of the National Institutes of Drug Abuse in the New England Journal of Medicine, 374-1253, if you want to look it up. And she basically said there are 10 million people in the United States taking opiates all the time. The presumption is these are patients with pain. We have a collaborating study from the Netherlands where 3% of their population also takes long-term opiates. So this is 3% of our population, 3% of all the states, 3% of every community, or 10 million people in the United States. So how do we know of those 10 million people, how many have been taken off their medicines? 3 months before the CDC published its unauthorized guidelines, their scientific board said to them, you be sure you follow up of any unintended consequences. It's been 3 years, no follow-up. Maybe they're going to get around to it. They're really not sure. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 studies that have been done finding out using surveys of anywhere from 2,000 to 3,100 people, getting a percentage of people with rare painful diseases who've been taken off their medicines without their consent. Pain News Network, 66%. Twitter Snapshot that we did, 85%. Pain News Network, a different survey, 71%, and Sermo, which is a physician-type online survey mechanism, 70%. So the average comes up to about 7 million people. That's really hard to believe. How come we don't know more about this? Because the 7 million people are too sick to get out of bed now that their lives have been ruined by taking them off their medicines, and either go out and kill themselves or they'll try to find drugs on the street. But most of them just sit on the sofa and suffer every single day because they've got permanent, long-term, serious, painful diseases. And we're going to talk about them a little bit. So we have only 20% of this 10 million people that are getting adequate treatment, only 1 in 5. The CDC Prop Coalition has managed to directly or indirectly lead to the destruction of daily functional lives. Here are the diseases. And this can be found on my website, JATH, which will take you to the Medium platform, and the paper is called Long-Term Rare Painful Diseases. And just to give you a couple, and we're going to talk about them more later with some comments from people that have these god-awful things. The first one is chronic regional pain syndrome, or CRPS. This is an oddball disease that after an injury, instead of shutting down the inflammation, it continues. Excuse me. So people have these weird symptoms where their hand will suddenly swell up, turn red, and feel like been stung by a bee. Interstitial cystitis is an inflammation inside of the bladder, no cause, no treatment. One lady said it was like having a bowling ball in her pelvis with spikes. Trigeminal neuralgia, which is a horrible shooting pain that comes out of your face that just knocks you to the ground. No treatment. A lot of treatments have been tried and don't work. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or EDS, is a disease where people's joints pop out for no reason. I don't know if you've ever had a dislocated joint, but imagine having these every day. How much pain do you think these people are in? There is no treatment for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Central pain syndrome, we want to spend a few minutes on that because that's the new name for fibromyalgia. Last year at the Massachusetts General Hospital and the Karolinska Institute in Sweden, both top hospitals, have discovered what causes fibromyalgia, and I think chronic fatigue syndrome is the same thing, so we're going to just include that as the same thing. You can get an x-ray of your head and you'll see bones. You can get an MRI of your brain and you can see parts of the brain. But you can't see what's going on in the brain. So these researchers have come up with what's called a PET, P-E-T scan, where they put radioactive dye and you can actually see what's going on. So what they were looking for is inflammatory cells. If you have a splinter in your foot and it turned red, you have inflammatory cells. If you have a brain encephalitis, you have inflammatory cells. And this is a picture, and we'll see if we can hold it still, of the actual PET scan, positron emission tomography. And you see those spots? Those spots are white cells in the brain, or glial cells, G-L-I-A-L, glial cells, which tells you that there is a gigantic inflammation going on inside the brain. Think of all the years of people with fibromyalgia and horrible tiredness and pains being passed off as turkeys, as the physicians would say. They aren't. They have a real brain disease. Your brain is in charge of everything, including pain. Pudendal nerve neuralgia, Chiari malformation, sickle cell disease is one of the worst, most horrible disease. People are being denied pain treatment. We have a few nasty videos of high-sounding doctors telling people they aren't going to get any more medicine for their sickle cell disease in the emergency room. Lyme's disease, duodenal obstruction disease, it goes on and on. These are the rare diseases, and if you wish to read about them, go to the website and just look up rare diseases, or you can Google Medium catalog Klein, and it'll get you there too. Next time, we're going to be talking about a new disease. We're going to be talking about systemic inflammatory disease. Thank you.